Today we're going to talk about, I think the best we can describe it is pitfalls of modern medicine, or just going through how it has evolved through the times and where we are still falling short, because we know there used to be a lot of weird practices very long time ago, and we kind of expect that it's all gone, but we still seem to see things that might not be in alignment with what actually might be the most optimal things that work. So do you want to break down an overview of how medicine has evolved maybe over past decades, and maybe some technological advancements that are helping us and maybe are not helping us as well?
Yeah. So modern medicine, right? So this is basically everything in first world countries, right? Has evolved to be very, very good at treating trauma, acute, anything, right? You break your arm, we're really, really good. You cut your finger off your hand, we'll probably be able to put it back on and fix it. You get in a car accident, you definitely want to go to a medical doctor. You get in any kind of internal injury, right? As far as like, I mean, you could literally name them. You get kicked in the side by, another person or an animal or whatever, and you get internal damage of any kind of organ. We have the tools to be able to open you up, fix you up, and get you back up and running, heart attacks, things of that nature. What modern medicine really sucks at, and I really mean that, is managing. Well, they're great at managing disease. Let's put it that way. They're also good at managing disease. They are not good at preventing disease or fixing disease. There has yet to be a drug or a procedure invented that can fix a disease. That's not a thing that modern medicine does. The sooner you understand that, the sooner you get on board with what's going to happen if you have any kind of disease. It could be anything from type 2 diabetes to PCOS to just broad level sex hormone dysfunction. None of the things that they give you will fix the problem. They're only going to manage the problem. Okay, that is fundamental to understand. It doesn't mean that you don't have that choice, right? Maybe you don't want to fix the problem, right? Maybe the things that are required for you to fix the problem are things that you're not willing or capable of doing at this very point in time. And in that case, going to a doctor is going to be the best call because they're good at managing the disease. The way they're going to manage it is with drugs, okay? Drugs do not fix things. Drugs step around certain roadblocks. Drugs amplify certain things, right? Those are things that drugs do. They do not fix the underlying symptom, because the underlying symptom, especially with most modern diseases, we're talking about type 2 diabetes, and the combination of all them, it's called metabolic syndrome. They have a name for it now, where your metabolism, your biology is not functioning correctly, right? And most people are led to believe by people in the fitness industry that it's all about lack of exercise and food. It goes way beyond that, right? Like too much food and not moving enough. Like that's the mantra of everything. And so the doctor is basically going to tell you that, right? Basically, well, just watch what you eat and get a little more exercise, and here's a drug, right? But that's about as far as it's going to go. Even from most fitness people, it's still going to come down to, can we get you to eat less food and can get you to move more? Not saying that that's not fundamental in terms of coming from a sedentary lifestyle, like we've talked about at the beginning, right? We have to get you to do some of that. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to changing the baseline biology of how your body works, right? In that basics of fundamental, or the coming from a sedentary to an active lifestyle, it takes a lot more than just telling somebody to eat less and move more.
Can you list the most common things that you see that are prescribed to deal with whatever? I often come across with, hey, ipamorelin, metformin, you take telmisartan and whatever. And you're like, okay, they are giving you something, not addressing the cause. What are things you see most often, and why do you think they are pushed out there, and what else can be done instead of that?
Well, from a female perspective, and not just females, but most females, they are in their 30s, 40s, or older, and they go to the doctor and they have some kind of dysfunction. First thing they're going to get put on is some kind of thyroid medication. I see that a lot. Next thing they're going to be put on is some kind of sex hormone replacement type stuff, whether that's just progesterone or the combination of progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. Then second, or maybe alongside those, maybe it's thyroid, because it really depends on your mitochondrial makeup, your mitochondrial genes, and where you live. You're either going to get some kind of thyroid dysfunction coupled with sex hormone dysfunction, or you're going to get some kind of thyroid dysfunction coupled with some kind of insulin resistance dysfunction, right? So depending on the flavor of the metabolic derangement that you get, you're going to get some thyroid medication and something like metformin, something like these days that every single doctor that I see, if you're even remotely overweight and have some kind of insulin problem, they're going to give you Ozempic, and they basically just hop on the newest, latest drug for addressing the variety of symptoms that you might have, whether that's some level of insulin dysregulation, some level of thyroid dysregulation, some level of sex hormone dysregulation. And those are the big ones. Those are really the big ones, right? And we have videos specifically on these dysregulations. We have videos on insulin resistance. We have videos on thyroid issues and sex hormone issues. And we, in those videos, in very, very good detail, lay out the baseline physiology of why these symptoms go wrong and how they should be working correctly, right? But just high level view, it's your environment, right? Metabolism, right? Which is your thyroid system, not just your thyroid system, but it's a big player, right? Is not how many calories you can eat and how much, how much energy you expend. It's part of the equation, but the real thing the metabolism is how your body is making the things that make you a human, that make you alive, right? All the proteins associated with neurotransmitters, all the proteins associated with structures in your body that are not muscle tissue, like tendons, ligaments, intestinal tract, your stomach, your eyes, your hair, all of those are proteins. Your metabolism is governed and making those appropriately if your circadian rhythm is tied to the solar cycle correctly, because that's how your body tells time, right? Like all of these things, like your body is not manufacturing all these things that I just talked about all the time infinitely. It has specific times of the day and night where it optimizes the building of those things. Think of it like a plant, like a manufacturing plant. The thing is, you have all the machines in there are capable of making everything. The problem is they have to be set up to be optimized for muscle building, or to be optimized for brain restoration, or to be optimized for gut restoration. You have all the machinery inside of you. It just needs to be kind of tweaked a little bit for certain tasks. So what your body has learned to do is to set it up according to the day, the time of day or the time of night, to be optimized to make those things, right? So it's a timekeeping thing, right? It is your body clearly understanding what time of day it is, so that it clearly understands how to optimize the manufacturing of certain things. There are some external things.
Before you go there, I wanted to ask about all these medicines that are prescribed by doctors more often than not. What effect do they actually have on health if somebody just bluntly ignores completely what they do day to day, and hey, I'm just going to take Ozempic, I'm just going to take metformin, I'm just going to take thyroid, and so on and so forth? What can be the negative drawbacks from that if they just jump straight into the drug route?
Well, each one of those, right? So there are feedback loops, right? Every single system in the body has a feedback loop, right? And the reason why there's feedback loops is exactly for what I just stated before, so that certain systems can be turned off and turned back on according to how much it's flown, right? That's the feedback loop. If you are displaying a lot of insulin, there's a feedback loop there to make you insulin resistant, so that you don't overdrive that system. because there are certain times, according to biology, right, certain times of the day where you should be insulin resistant. For example, and certain times of the year also being insulin resistant. That's an advantage from a biological perspective, right? So every single one of the things that you just mentioned, right? Ozempic, metformin, any type of sex hormone for testosterone or for sex hormone replacement, they will kill feedback loops over time, right? So if you take them, what can you expect? Well, you can expect the markers that your doctor looked at and went, oh, these are too high or too low or whatever. This drug will fix that. It will fix that, right? No question about it. It will change the number on the sheet. But you also have to understand that at the same time, it's killed a feedback loop or amplified a feedback loop, which means you will now have a side effect, some side effect at some point in time, and it will happen. You won't be able to get away with, oh, I took this drug for, I don't know, 5 years, no side effects. That's not a thing. You will have side effects. Most of those side effects have to do with things that are not even related to the system that you're trying to modify. For example, sex hormone modification eventually will lead to some kind of phlebitic modification, right? Red blood cells change, things of that nature. Other issues start to happen that are not even related to the system because it's all intertwined, because it's all optimized so that it can switch when you're not active versus when you're active, when there is daylight versus when there's not daylight. It changes how the body completely acts. And if you are continually adding a drug into that system that keeps a certain system running full blast or extra sensitive, right? Insulin sensitivity comes to mind, then you are going to extinguish other pathways and cause other problems. Now, like I opened, if you're in a time in your life where you can't modify your behavior, you have to do the things that are keeping you sick, well, then drugs are the right thing, right? But you have to go into, the doctor's not going to talk about this particular, he's not going to have this conversation. He's not going to have the conversation of, hey, you have this problem. Here's a drug that will temporarily fix this problem, but your lifestyle is what's causing the problem. Here are the things that you got to change. Can you change them? No, I can't. Okay, well, at some point in time, you probably should change them because that's what's actually going to fix you. Until then, right, we'll monitor your blood work, we'll monitor your well-being, and here's a drug. But I don't recommend being on this for more than, 2 or 3 years without thinking about modifying your lifestyle. That is not a conversation you're ever going to have with the doctor. Why? Because they make money every time you come back, right? So if you're there for 3 years, they made money for 3 years. If you're there for 5 years, they made money for 5 years. There is no, and I'm not saying that doctors are knowingly doing this. That's just the algorithm that they follow. The algorithm, when you come in and you present a certain set of blood work markers that are off and a certain set of display of behavioral things, right, that are off, immediately they put that information in their electronic take-in sheet, and it tells them what they should recommend to you. It's not, it tells them, hey, you need to
we
look
see
at
it
these
very
things.
often when like even when I was going to my doctors when I was like teenage years, because my strength and conditioning coach was always sending me to do blood tests, and the doctor had to get a book out to read me a blood test. At 14, I knew more about blood tests than my own doctor, because I had spoken to my strength and conditioning coach, because he had completely different approach to that. And I believe, like what you just said, it's not that they are doing it maliciously. It's just this is what they've been taught. To fix this person, you need to give them this medicine. But people don't look into how do I prevent them from coming in altogether, which is what we are trying to do. We are trying to make people healthy so they don't need to deal with this kind of thing. So when you go from all this, can you define what would be the better approach than jumping into medicine route? So how do you even assess your environment, and how do you assess if the doctor is doing the best for you? Is there anything that you can ask your doctor maybe, or What
Yeah,
comes to
yeah.
mind for you when somebody comes and lists, hey, I've been struggling with this thing and I've been taking all these things. Let's say I've had disrupted sleep and I've been to 5 different specialists and none of them told me what to do, apart from take this, take that, and none of it fixed me. What else could have they asked that person?
Yeah, so this is the thing where you're gonna run into a lot of dead ends when you ask this question. How, for example, let's just take what you just stated, sleep. How does sleep work? Just asking that question. You're gonna find that every single doctor will say, I'm not really sure. Go to the specialist. That's what's gonna happen every single time. You go to the specialist, you ask them, well, it's complicated. We have so many studies that tell us this. We have so many studies that tell us that. We don't really know. That's the answer you're going to get. Why? Because the other thing that stops doctors from executing correctly, right? So there's 2 fallacies here. Number one, they follow an algorithm that tells them how to recommend. Even if a doctor is a well-meaning doctor, unless he's employed by himself, he's his own boss, he's usually employed by somebody else. And that employer needs them to comply with the algorithm. Okay. So they're potentially losing customers, pay, and their job if they don't comply with the recommendations of the algorithm. That's called standard of care, right? That's what keeps them from being sued. That's what keeps them from losing their job. So that's obstacle number 1. Even if they're a well-meaning doctor, they still kind of have to go down that route if they're employed by somebody else. Number 2, if they happen to be employed by themselves and they can call their own shots, the next thing is the only thing that they garner as evidence is science. This day and age, science is not science. Science is propaganda. The reason for that is because the people paying for all of the scientific medical literature are drug companies. Okay,
Would you
it's
go
just that
as far
simple.
as say that not only that, but social media has made science a bit wishy-washy because a lot of people don't even read methodology and they just put out these amazing infographics and they have this massive following. Just other week, I was looking at something about the fat loss for professionals and it was so much garbage. And I was looking through methodology. I'm like, this is literally not applicable to anything in real life. Why are we even talking about this?
Correct. 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 And that's because science is captured. Science is captured by drug companies or affiliates of drug companies, right? Universities, high universities that fund a study. They have a lot of money. Well, where do you think they're getting their money? They're getting it from drug companies, right? And that way the drug company isn't directly tied to the study, but the university is, and the university is getting the money from the drug company, right? You have to look at these things objectively. And that makes it hard for even a well-meaning doctor, because then he goes to studies and he goes, man, this is really confusing. Like, being recommended to a sleep specialist, and all of a sudden the sleep that, the answer from the sleep specialist is it's complicated, right? So here, try this, right? Try that, try this other thing, right? But what really should be happening is going back to fundamental sciences being physics, fundamental sciences being like quantum biology, quantum physics. Those types of things are not taught to doctors and not included in methodology of medical science. That's a big flaw because we are all subject to the physics of this planet, right? Like at the end of the day, the thing that has shaped every biological being on this planet, including humans, is the physics of how this planet works. And those are not fundamental principles that are taken into account when looking at any medical literature. Very, very few. There's more and more evidence coming out in terms of the physics, right? And the physics starts with light. Like if anything that anybody has gathered from any of our material is physics starts with light. Starts with light because light starts to shape all types of things, from electromagnetic fields to gravity fields to all kinds of other things. And that has everything to do with biology. So going back to the sleep example, right? If you go to a sleep specialist and they go, well, it's complicated, right? And you ask them, well, okay, I asked you the question, how does sleep work? And they didn't really know how to answer it. Immediately, you have to assume that they truly don't know. And if they're a accurate medical doctor, that's probably what the answer will be. We don't really know, but you're having problems with falling asleep. So here's a drug that will help you fall asleep. Or you have problems with staying asleep for a long period of time. Here's a different drug that tends to make it so that you sleep for longer, right? And then, then they might even suggest, well, go to a therapist and, try to get some therapy on like meditation and relaxation and things of that nature. But they're forgetting the physics of the whole thing. The physics starts with, and more, especially with when it comes to like sleep, they're like, okay, well, what's your sleep hygiene? Light at night, try to diminish that, try to make your room really dark, et cetera, et cetera. But again, they're missing the point. Where does it start? It starts with hormonal responses to specific points in time during the day. Go back to the very beginning of this video where it's like, hey, certain processes are optimized at certain times of the day, and the body is trying to figure out what time of day it is to optimize a certain process. The only way biology understands what time of day is not the clock. It's not the watch, it's not the clock on your phone, it's not the clock on your computer. Your biology, your cells do not know that. They don't care. What they care about is the electromagnetic field that's interacting with the cells. And that electromagnetic field is light-based during the day and earth-based, or the electromagnetic field of the planet, at night when the sun goes away. That's what at the bare level of how your biology works is like that. If you're a diurnal creature, when the electromagnetic field of the sun comes up, which means light, okay, that the sun is giving off a specific electromagnetic barcode that is the light that we can see and all the spectrum that we can't see. Your cells tune into that, and it changes throughout the day. So it starts to optimize cells for specific actions at specific times of the day. When it goes away, there shouldn't be any light interacting with eyes and skin, and that optimizes the biological system at the base level for the rest and repair cycle. So some of the things that some people will tell you are spot on. Make the room as dark as possible. Great. But if you're doing that literally minutes before you plan on going to sleep, that wasn't enough time for your biology to circumvent and start the switching program, right? And on the flip side,
You have
there are
touched
some
many times before as well about sleep. We had a video about, hey, don't eat close to bed, make it cool, maybe go outside. If you have a shower, maybe have it in a dark, literally shower.
Block some blue light, block as much blue light as you can so that you're not activating daytime processes, right? Because that's the other thing. So they start to, they get some things right, but then they miss other fundamentals like, okay, what are the things that keep you awake, right? Because if you have a problem falling asleep, most concentrate on what are the things that make you fall asleep. They should also concentrate on the things that make you awake, right? That's the actual problem you're having. You're awake when you should be asleep. What are the things that turn on the wakeful side of the circadian rhythm? Blue light. Blue light's a major one. It's one of the main stimuluses to actually keep you awake, right? So if you have blue light at night, I don't care how dark your sleeping room is, you're going to be awake. You're going to be more awake than you should be, and you're not going to be releasing specific hormonal cascades to optimize for sleep.
And it brings me to the next question about what are the challenges you always see that people can't overcome to fix their body, so to speak, and what are the benefits of having personalized approach in your sense? From what I see, challenge might be that it's time consuming, because you need to literally prod the person and understand what their day looks like and what they actually can do and whatnot. Benefits would be you're gonna be amazing, gonna be feeling amazing. So what challenges do you come across most often from people who are suffering some kind of misalignment with their body, and so that they actually have to go and get it treated by medicine? And what are the benefits when they start doing more personalized approach?
Yeah, so the challenge is being outside. I'm not joking. So the number one challenge is how often can I get this person outside during the day? I mean, there's studies right now literally highlighting that people spend 90% of their waking hours indoors. 90%. That is a lot. If you're awake for 16
Can you
hours.
expand being outside that it does not mean standing in front of the window? What would
Yeah, correct. It literally means you need to be skin in the
outside
game.
does not mean you're sitting in a car. That's not outside.
No. The only time outside counts is if there's air from the outside world interacting with your body, right? You can be in a car if you have your windows rolled down, you're outside. You can be indoors if the windows are open. Now you're interacting with the outside. That is the hardest part. And that's actually some of the hacks that I use to get people to get more outside time, right? But outside is outside. There cannot be any solid object between you and what's going on outside. If there is a solid object, you're not outside. You're getting a fraction of the solar spectrum that you should be getting. And the solar spectrum interacts with so many different variables, including, okay, we're focusing a little bit about sleep. The amount of solar energy that you get during the day actively creates a specific amount of melatonin in your mitochondria that then later, when the sun goes away, gets released into the brain. So think of it that way. The magnitude of melatonin that your body's going to dump into your brain when the sun goes away is directly correlated with how much sun you got during the day. So if you spend 90% of the time indoors, even if you made your house really dark, you're not going to release nearly as much melatonin as if you spent more time outside. Let's just say that, right? Like the humans are the only animal on the planet that has actively chosen to live indoors. Every other animal on the planet does not live indoors. Even farmed animals, we'll build them, sheds and things to take shelter in, but they don't actively choose to be in that shelter. If you ever watch any farm animals, they go in there in bad weather, right? Don't get me wrong, they also seek some comfort, but at the end of the day, they don't choose to be indoors. They choose to be outside, and that's fundamental because they don't have frontal lobes, right? They don't have frontal lobes that envision their wants and their needs and all of those types of things. But it's fundamental, right? Like they just know, hey, when I go outside, right? Like my dog, for example, every morning I let it out. If it's sunny, it doesn't come back in. It chooses to stay outside, especially when it's sunny. Even when it's not that warm outside, it could be 30 degrees Fahrenheit. If it's sunny, my dog doesn't come back in. It chooses to stay outside, and guess what it's doing? Laying out in the sun. It's just sunbathing because it inherently has developed evolutionary traits that tie it to the thing that's going to keep it healthy. Humans are the only species on the planet that has actively decided or been coaxed to be indoors and permanently circumvent the thing that's going to get them healthy, right? So that's the biggest challenge by far. And the personalized approach is figuring out unique ways for your lifestyle to get as much as possible. We want to take that 90% indoors and we want to reduce it as much as we can. The more you do that, the better you're going to feel. Specific times of the day are a little bit better for specific outcomes, and other, for example, sex hormones. It's the middle part of the day that you want to focus the most on, but maybe you're too sensitive to sunlight in the middle part of the day. So now you got to add in a little bit more of morning time than you would like, because morning time prepares you to not be as sensitive as far as like skin damage goes, as far to the middle part of the day. And there are lots of little intricacies to that, because when you start understanding how the electromagnetic field spectrum changes, literally like every other hour, then you can start understanding, hey, what part of your body, what part of the stuff that is going wrong with you is tied to certain parts of the daylight. And those are the places where you start to focus. And then you'll find, a little bit, like I said, maybe you're just too sensitive to take advantage of it because you've been indoors for too long. Then we have to build up certain systems, just like training, right? I can't just throw you, into the weight room and expect you to do well if you've never trained before, right? We need to start with the basics, and we need to start to prepare the tissues correctly so that they adapt correctly. That's no different to your eyes and your skin and your hair interacting with the outdoors. If you never interact with the outdoors, it's going to perform subparly, right? There are some nutritional things that could also help with that, depending on ethnicity and things of that nature and where you live, right? That's a big part. So that, and in fact, that's probably the next big part, right? The personalized care actually happens to be, where do you live, right? Where do you live? What's the season that you're in? That also dictates some behavioral things. Like, for example, if you live somewhere where it's cold, I'm going to tell you, you don't have a choice, buddy. You're going to have to get cold. You're going to have to get really damn cold. It's, but it's not like you're going to die, right? Like that's the whole point. That's what I try to highlight to people. Most of the things that I'm trying to get you to do.
Bringing me to a question about what kind of reforms do you think could be necessary for people to understand the benefits of all these things? Because we see a lot of people doing fasting, doing saunas, doing infrared light therapies, doing all kind of stuff, and still sitting at home. So what needs to be done? Maybe what needs to be done by health professionals, maybe people in fitness industries that really get that exposure to people. What do you think can be improved for people to start focusing on dealing with the cause rather than masking the issue?
Yeah, so any of these
actions that you would suggest?
Yeah, so any of these, like sauna therapy, infrared sauna therapy, or infrared lights, or things of that nature, they are there to facilitate your lifestyle and still get some benefit. But just like a drug, they are a workaround. They are a workaround. The difference is that some of these, most of them, aren't going to ruin feedback loops. So they're a little bit more able to be used more long term. But at the end of the day, people need to actually be told the truth, which is they're workarounds. Nothing will substitute the outside. It's just that simple. It's so simple that people push back, right? Like people do not want to hear, well, yeah, you could use sunbed, you could use a cold plunge, you could do this, you could do that, and if you structure it at certain times of the day, it'll start to kind of tweak your biology a little bit. I'm not saying those are valid, and if you know how to do that, you can see improvements. But at the end of the day, there is no substitute for the outside. So if you do have major problems, some of these modalities will help elucidate to you, oh, he was right, or that is correct. I was blue light toxic. When I started blocking blue light, I started to sleep better. And then, like I explained earlier, well, how much sun time are you getting? Because now you can sleep even better, right? If you get more sun time outside to create more melatonin. And then they go, okay, well, I don't have that amount of time to be outside. Can I use a sun tanning bed? Well, to some degree, it might help a little bit, right? And you might see some improvement there. But if you see a little bit of improvement and it's not quite enough that what you thought, instead of going, it didn't work, you go, well, I am using a synthetic form of modifying that. So now we need to upgrade to the actual outside. At the end of the day, it's very simple. It's the outside is your friend for 90% of the people. Now, why do I say only 90% of the people? Because sometimes the outside can be not your friend if you live in a city, right? And we've talked a little bit about this and that. And that's where I highlighted where you live is by far going to be the most important thing, right? Getting outside, important thing number one. Second thing, where do you live? Because the outside for some people might actually not be very good. You live in a city with lots of pollution, going outside probably won't be that good for you. You'll have to take a drive out of the city to make the outside good for you. If you live right next to an airport, right, going outside isn't going to change the electromagnetic field that you have induced on your body, because you're right next to an airport with radar and all kinds of things of that. So where you live becomes, for some, it's number one. It jumps the gun from outside to number one, because their environment is actually making them sick from a biological perspective through the form of electromagnetic field pollution and regular pollution, and things of that nature. So it's really that is the personalized approach to that.
Yeah, and what you just described as well is that it feels like people would really benefit if they understood that we are just walking batteries. Just the other day, I was watching this program about how the flower itself will have negative charge, and that B, the way it functions, it has positive charge. That's why when they come together, they kind of cancel each other out. And they even tested a sound that's made by a flower. And when B approaches it just goes silent. They are kind of in a sync. And same happens with human beings. So the more time you can spend outside, you see these hippie type people hugging trees and whatnot. There's a reason why when you go on holiday somewhere, and spend a lot of time outside bare feet, you feel amazing. And
yeah. Or just out in nature, right? Just out in nature because of what you just said, right? What you just said is fundamental. The plant was giving off a negative charge, right? What is a negative charge? That's electrons, right? Those are electrons. What does all of your food turn into? Electrons. What do some of the modalities that I have people do? You're collecting electrons, right? Just being out in nature helps you collect more electrons. That's why I say the outside is the answer, barring that the
free
outside
energy,
is a good.
just to be direct, it's just free energy.
Yeah, I know that sounds really, really weird, but it's free energy. And that video you just described, that is fundamental, because when the bee picks up the pollen from that plant, guess what? The negative charge from the plant is subsided. So another bee comes along and it will know, hey, the pollen's already been picked up. There isn't a big negative charge there. So they move on to another flower. That's how bees are being communicated with by flowers, is electrically, through electric charges. And that's just the tip of the iceberg on how biology on the whole planet works, because of how the sun and the earth interact. The sun being positive, the earth being negative, anything that grows from the earth is giving off free electrons for anything that's not tied directly to the earth. So high level concepts of the baseline of how biology works. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that is the physics that's missing in scientific literature. They never tie it back to, did the experiment that we design actually take into account the basics of how biology works? And the answer is no. The answer is no. That's why science has become propaganda. They're just showing you what they want you to see.
Yeah, so probably wrapping up this video would be more open-minded to different ideas, and things that we talk about might sound kind of wishy-washy, but there is strong science behind it. You know, none of this is just made up stuff about, hey, go hug a tree and you're going to feel amazing. No, there is literally a step-by-step sequence why it does make you feel amazing. You know,
Yes.
Well, before I let you go, can you just give me maybe one most rewarding aspect that you've experienced by giving somebody a personalized approach, how they changed, and what they actually do?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is being able to get the feedback from them that the thing that they were targeting to fix, that they've been trying to fix for a while, starts to become fixed. Sometimes it takes a lot more effort for certain people, just because their environment has been so bad for so long, or their lifestyle has been so bad for so long. But it always turns around, as long as they're consistent with the lifestyle changes that fits. And that's what the personalized approach is I'm setting it up so that the person can actively execute regularly, even with their personal lifestyle, on the things that will move the needle. And for some people, they have more time than others, so they can see really vast results very quickly, because I just flat out tell them, hey, if you can swing it because you have time, you're not time poor, boom, do this for 4 hours at this point in time during the day. They start doing that one thing, and next thing you know, they see results in 3 or 4 weeks. Other people don't have that amount of time, so they have to start with smaller steps, but they will eventually get there. And that's rewarding in itself, because now you're teaching them how to keep themselves healthy.
Awesome, Dave. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you next video.
See ya.